Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. First up, recorded live in the Environics Analytics podcasting studio at RCC's Retail Cannabis Forum in Toronto, I meet Lisa Bigioni, an Ontario Retail Cannabis Lottery winner and co-owner of Choom Cannabis Niagara. We talk about the experience around winning the lottery, the process of picking a partner, and opening up a cannabis retail store under incredibly tight deadlines. Next, recorded live at the Retail Council of Canada's Bricks and Mortar Forum in Toronto, we check in with Claire Santamaria, Vice President at Yorkdale Shopping Centre, one of the premier shopping centres in North America. Claire talks about the fashion heritage of the mall and the hard work that goes into finding the right retail partners and the people that make it all come together and create Canada's most productive shopping environment. Lastly, part 2 of my interview with Angela Kapp, retail and brand maven and now co-CEO of GG Growth, a modern enterprise based in Arizona that includes the top YouTube series Canna Cribs and recently launched True Potency, a CBD retail and resource. That's where we pick up our conversation. Lastly, I'll hit the highlights in retail this week for the week of December 9. But first, let's jump into my interview with Lisa from Choom. Lisa, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Well, thanks for joining me. You know, this is a real treat for me. I think it's my first opportunity to interview in this space one of the Ontario lottery winners, and I was so impressed by your store.
Thank you.
Choom, and I want to learn all about that and how you chose a partner. But why don't we start with a little bit about yourself and your partner who together have found a journey into retail cannabis?
Yeah, sure. So I have a little bit of background in retail. When I worked at IBM had a network of retail stores 100 years ago or so, and I worked in that group at IBM, and then I left IBM and I went to the Rotman School of Management.
Alumni
well done.
Yeah.
So I worked on the executive program side, the non-degree side, as director of marketing and business development. And then, this opportunity came along, and I've since left U of T, and here I am.
Threw your hat in the ring, and lo and behold, you win yourself a license, and now you're in the retail cannabis business. So, tell me what that journey was like, from obviously, hey, we just won a license. Oh, my God.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
That's not a small commitment. The next step was not a small commitment. You had to put in some serious dollars. It was a serious commitment.
Yep.
And then you had decisions around choosing a partner. So walk me through that, and then how you made a decision about who to choose. You probably had a couple of choices.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you get to where you
So we found out on a Friday night. I got the email from the AGCO telling me that I had been accepted. So my husband had applied as well. We each had applied. And he, frantically checked his phone. He did not have an email. And so then within 10 minutes, I think my phone started going crazy.
So it must be public now, right?
The AGCO had emailed it all out and tweeted it and all of that stuff. So people were finding me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. It was overwhelming, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And I wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. So I changed my name on Facebook. I couldn't really do much about LinkedIn. I couldn't figure it out, but there was panic going on for sure. And so I kind of took that night and the next day to weed through my emails and phone calls, etc., and figure out who everyone was and who I needed to speak to. I immediately knew that I needed a lawyer, and I needed an accountant, and I needed some advice from some people who know how to strike these kinds of deals, because I had never been involved in this sort of thing before. And so then I kind of carefully chose the conversations that I was going to engage in throughout the week, and sort of started weeding through those and looking at what other people had to offer. But the other thing is, we strongly considered doing this on our own.
Sure.
Before we applied, we talked about, my husband has a small retail business himself, so we talked about doing this on
entrepreneur,
our own.
right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. But the timelines were just so tight. Incredibly tight, and we needed to have a location. We went for the west of Ontario, which was a pretty big swath. And when we started to look at locations, we discovered that a number of the retailers coming in from the west had essentially all the good ones locked up. So, we started to focus on the conversations that we were having with partners, and Choom sort of rose to the top, primarily because I really liked their brand. It's kind of a superficial reason, but I really liked their brand, and I really liked the people that I was speaking with. They kind of, we related on a sort of business level, and we talked about learning and development, which was the industry that I was exactly in at that point. And
so important, right?
Yeah.
So important. I mean, I'm not sure everyone appreciated it at the beginning, but certainly everyone does now.
Right, exactly.
The role of the associate learning development,
Yes.
over and above the basics, right?
Right. And so we just ended up saying, okay, I'm going to talk to you and let's take this conversation right through to the end. And so here we are.
So you picked Choom.
Yeah.
And tell me about the store. Tell me about your environment and the store and what you like about it and how it aligns to your vision of that retail.
So one of the reasons it was beneficial to partner with Choom or anyone else was because they had locations already, and that was the roadblock that I was up against. And so we talked about their locations. They had one in Kitchener that I wasn't in love with, and I kind of talked to them about I don't really like that location. I like Kitchener. But
nothing against Kitchener.
No, nothing against Kitchener, but the actual space was inside a kind of older mall and what have you. So, we collectively decided to look at their other locations, and Niagara Falls just kind of rose to the top as being a great spot, and their location itself with lots of parking.
See it from the highway, nice, easy access.
Yeah. And it was a blank slate, so it had been an old Le Chateau, but it was the storage room. So there was no plumbing really, and it all had to be built. And again, that's where Choom came in, because they had that expertise to hire the right people and get everyone engaged to manage the process.
So you're a year plus or minus into the journey.
Yep.
Lessons learned, top lessons learned, anything that surprises
so many.
you?
This has been the most incredible learning experience of my life, I have to admit. Lessons learned in terms of, I wasn't a huge cannabis consumer prior to this. I'm still not a huge consumer, but I now have a much deeper appreciation for the kinds of consumers that are out there beyond the, Cheech and Chong stereotype, which I think is amazing. And I think that's where the stigma is coming away from that stereotype into, regular everyday people that consume cannabis for a variety of
all
reasons.
ages. When I visited your store, I saw 20-year-olds all the way up to 60-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, from a stereotype perspective, we've really had very little negative feedback from customers or potential customers. It seems to have been really well received, and I think there was this, and there potentially still is in Ontario, this crazy fear about regulation and what's going to happen, and really it's nothing. It's just selling product that can that has some psychoactive effect like liquor does.
Yep.
And so it's really kind of been not that big of a deal.
You talked about learning education with your background. I wanted to just talk about bud tenders for a bit. Do you call them bud tenders in your
We call them sales associates, but they have also done a sommelier training course. So
what makes for a good associate in your location? What do you look for when you're hiring?
So, anyone, when they're hiring anyone for any role, I think immediately there has to be just a good fit. You can tell, people talk about knowing within the first 5 seconds whether you like the individual. That's certainly at play. It is really helpful if someone does have some experience in cannabis through the, unregulated market and then, transitioning to the regulated market. That's really helpful. I didn't have a lot of that, and I've learned so much from the sales associates that we've hired. And just the ability to sell and understand and ask questions and get to the root of what consumers are looking for. Personality, that's a big part of
Curiosity,
it.
personality.
We've definitely hired some folks that don't have a lot of cannabis experience, but that part can be learned. So we've really hired, and diversity was key as well. People my age to, down to the 20-somethings. It's been really helpful.
Last question, advice for anyone thinking about, someday in the future, hopefully very soon, there'll be more licenses and there'll be many more entrepreneurs. Advice from your perspective? I think it's a
great business to be in. I think don't underestimate the effects of regulation and the challenges of working with the government in this space, because it has been a significant challenge, and a lot of the stress,
even with an experienced partner, right?
A lot of the stress has been regulation related. Not that I was, had any intention of going against regulation, but the rules have been quite strict. But just have fun with it. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful business, and I think there's still a ton of opportunity. So
fantastic.
If anyone wants to connect with me, I'd be happy to chat.
Well, that's a great segue. So how do people get in touch with you and tell us where they can find your location if they happen to be in the Niagara region?
Yeah, we're choom.ca is the Choom website, and there's a retail section on that website, but also we're on Leafly. That's kind of probably the best spot to find us, and anyone can send an email to the store, and that will end up getting to me, and I can connect with someone.
Well, thanks so much for spending time with the Voice of Retail here in the Environics Analytics podcasting studio at the Retail Council of Canada's Retail Cannabis Forum. That's a long exit to my
absolutely.
question, but there it is anyway. Thanks so much for joining me. Claire, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks. You just rolled off the stage at RCC's Brick and Mortar Forum. Great insights, and it's such a great opportunity to capture a little bit about you and a little bit about the success of Yorkdale and your trade craft. So why don't we start with a little bit about your personal journey and what you do at Yorkdale?
Sure. So some would say that I'm a bit of a mall rat, and it's something that I love, and I think the shopping center industry is something that's been near and dear to my heart, and I hate to say it, but when you start to tally up the years, I stopped at 20, but it's been a bit more than that, but we won't get into exactly how long. Essentially, in my role at Yorkdale, I lead the site operational team, and really that's 200 Oxford employees.
Wow.
But we do have a retailer employee base of more than 6,000. So it's really an opportunity to run a facility, but also our purpose certainly is to help drive traffic and sales to the shopping center and to support all the businesses that work and the stakeholders that work alongside our asset.
All right, on. So for the fourth year, I've stopped counting in a row, Yorkdale tops the list in terms of productivity. It's a retail phenomenon. It's one of the top malls in North America, certainly. What's the secret sauce? What is it that has the resilience of a mall like Yorkdale to continue to be successful? What is that formula?
So when you take a look at the Canadian shopping center landscape, one of the things that Yorkdale has, and we are incredibly fortunate, is that we've got a 55-year history, and even though we've had multiple ownership and multiple developers that have worked and attached themselves to the shopping center at different phases and stages, ultimately we have three things. We've always been a leader within the industry. So when Yorkdale opened in 1964, it opened as the world's largest shopping center at that time.
I didn't know that.
At 1 million square feet, but there's no Google to actually look it up to see if that's true. But also led as a leader within that fashion industry and has continued to do so in our entire history. And again, it didn't matter the developer or time or phase of the shopping center. That's always been a leading and differentiating factor for the shopping center. The second thing is our location, and you know what they say with any real estate, location, 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 and we really are at the center of the city. We're not downtown, but we are at an intersecting point of two major highways, and we are a major transit hub as well, and so location for us obviously has lent itself really well, and when you're talking about first to market retailers entering into the marketplace, access to talent is really important, and being able to do that in such an easy way from our site is really to a benefit. And the third thing is the shopping center has really great bones. We were built incredibly well with a truck tunnel that services the retailers underneath. We have over 50 bays, truck tunnel bays that service our retailers underneath. But we also have really wide corridors and really high ceilings, lots of natural light. And again, those are things that we've continued as part of our signature over our entire history.
So built right the first time. I was recently touring a group of Australian retailers, and of course they wanted to go. They were a big box format, but I said, listen, you got to go to Yorkdale. And they were just flummoxed. At the traffic on a Sunday on the 401. They're like, what are you people doing on Sunday? And then when we approached, I've had this before when I'm doing tours. You approach the mall, we were coming, west to east, and you kind of crest, and they look and they go, oh my God,
Yeah.
And they were just, they were shocked. So that continued success, it's really just such a phenomenon. And you're right about that fashion element and the first to market piece, right? Like
Yes.
it's really been a characteristic over time of, we just heard the Kit Kat, Craig Pattis was just talking about Kit Kat, choosing your mall and your location for that, right?
So it's something that the teams over the years have worked really hard on. And it's not that retailers are always knocking at our door. Essentially, it's the fact that, we really do spend a lot of time making sure that we are a good fit for the partnerships that, we welcome into the shopping center. And it's a scary thing for a retailer, especially successful brands that have a proven track record into the marketplace, to open in a new market.
Right.
And shopping centers really are quite pedestrian when you compare them to the rest of the world. Luxury brands belong on a high street. They don't necessarily belong in a shopping center. And so, we do work very hard to ensure that their build out, again, is something that they can be proud of. And then we're able to support their business from the moment they start to onboard their own teams.
So it's a mix of great bones, hard work. It just doesn't happen. People just don't show up at the door. I mean,
No.
you'll probably make the top list of many international retailers at least for consideration, but that doesn't close the deal.
Right.
Let's turn the lens a little bit towards your retailers in the mall. What's your advice? You do a lot of work, your team does a lot of work to bring people to the mall, to make it a destination. What's your advice to the retailers in the mall in terms of turning the traffic that you deliver into traffic into their stores?
So the best cases that we've had, and we've done numerous case studies, the best cases we had are always the retailers where we've had really great collaboration right from the beginning. We have had some learnings along the way, and when you couple that with understanding what the new business is coming into your site, really there's an opportunity to create something. And so if there is that ability to be able to collaborate and influence, if it's food and beverage menu items or a process, if it's a retailer, perhaps something signature, and how can our marketing efforts help promote that. But again, if it's a new category, then it allows us to be able to really work together to be able to educate the retailer as well on what are some of the nuances of the Yorkdale guest.
As you look around the world, kind of a last summary question. I mean, you look around the world for best-in-class examples. I guess the challenge of being number one or one of the top malls is you need to look externally for inspiration. Where do you look, and what are you seeing that you see ahead and go, wow, that could be something in your industry or even for Yorkdale itself?
So, first of all, we're proud Canadians, and while there are lots of international brands that are looking to expand into the Canadian marketplace, I have to say that our team is really good at also looking at local opportunities that perhaps exist online, so they don't have sort of a physical presence yet, or unique experiences that are popping up in the marketplace that we think could have a long-term relationship with us.
So last question, if people need to get a hold of you or learn more, how do they do that?
They can reach us through info@yorkdale.com, or they can reach out to me directly. It's Santamaria at oxfordproperties.com.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for being on The Voice of Retail. Really appreciate your time and wish you continued success.
Thank you.
We're still a retailer. We do sell, but we put them through rigorous testing. And with that testing and vetting, and one of the first things we did was put together a science advisory board so that we could be up to date and up to speed on what is the latest data. We like to say we don't believe in miracles, we believe in data.
Well, it's not unusual, right, for natural ingredients products marketing to get ahead of performance and delivery results. And I see it sounds like what you're doing is intersecting that with a next level curation of product, right? I think I was reading your material and you said only 20% of the products that you test make it into your marketplace. Yeah. So you're really not just curating from an assortment, good, better, best. I'm sure you're doing that as well because you've got an eye to assortment with your background, but you're also that next level curation where I guess at the end of the day, your customers don't have to worry about the ingredient deck. They can put the faith, your objective is they can put the faith in true potency and say, whatever I'm buying on here for whatever I need it for, I have the confidence that it does what it says and it's safe and all those great things, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you look through it, we don't want to have tons and tons of products. We want to have a variety of formats and price points, right? So if you want to take a gummy, if you want to have a topical, many people want to start with the topical because it's a topical, right? And topicals are good for some things. Again, so we've actually looked at about 700 products so far. It's scary when I look at the numbers. And we have a process that includes, it starts also with our neuroscientist because he's looking at things like at the products, at what their claims are, whether any of their claims can be supported by science, right? What their stated ingredients are. Then let's say it's a topical. I look at every product, right? And I look at topicals, obviously, I know a lot about. Like, you want to also deliver a good experience, right? So if it's disgusting and smells like weed, right? And I trust me.
It's a different experience. That's a different experience.
That's not what this consumer wants, right? If it's very easy to make a tincture with CBD. That doesn't mean that everybody wants a tincture. And there are some tinctures, again, that taste like weed. So we look at the experience and we say to ourselves, okay, has it gone through kind of level number 1? Then we send them to an ISO certified. The ones that go through level 1 that's where you go from 700 to 300, get to an ISO certified. And we do third-party blinded testing. So even when some of these brands, and there are a lot of brands out there now that are doing what's called a COA, which is a certificate of analysis. So, and there are different kinds of, so sometimes they just test for the amount of CBD because, by the way, not according to me, but a University of Pennsylvania study on CBD found that 70% of the CBD products being sold online were not what they said they were. They did not contain the labeled amount of CBD or other ingredients. And some of them actually contained harmful ingredients, right? So they do it. Some of the better brands do it, and they do batch testing, and we always love that, right? But they may not be as extensive as we are. They may just test for CBD and make sure there's no THC, because by law in the U.S., to be considered hemp, it must have less than 0.3% THC, which is, of course, the psychoactive compound, the one that gets you high. So now,
I saw that on your site at the product detail level. Mm-hmm. Even you went to the point of highlighting, zero THC. It's clearly, from your research and understanding, an important distinctive point that you're making, not just overall on the site, but actually at the product detail level. So it must be reflected as a very important component of what consumers are looking for. That confidence, again, that confidence that you're building in the products that you're putting through. So all those products, you go from 700 to 300. You're kind of explaining for me, I guess, the product road of listing process.
Yeah.
It's really robust, and I guess you've got a process down so it doesn't bottleneck the site at the same time. Let's talk about pragmatic things like, how do you get new listings from point A to point B? So I guess that part of that focus is your timeline from meeting a brand to getting it up on site is not a week. That's for sure.
It's definitely not a week. And it will, and listen, let's be practical, right? So a lot of these, one of the reasons why we are, a little bit more of a traditional retailer, we buy product. We really wanted to just be a marketplace, but then we quickly discovered that we could not in any way, shape, or form, allow some of these small companies to take control of the customer experience. We were like, no way. So we need to do this, especially given who the customer is. So I'm not going to tell you that it is. And sometimes, listen, there are days that I get frustrated, don't get me wrong. And certainly my director of e-commerce, he comes out of fashion and he walks in, he's like, when are you going to get me more products? And I'm like, this is not the right question to be asking. When are we going to find more qualified products? But it takes a long time. And so we have had to establish protocols doing the actual testing, but getting the products in, right? Vetting them, doing the actual testing, talking to the company. We have an extensive questionnaire because we also want to make sure their supply chain, right? And they have, so if you say you're made from organic hemp, okay, let's see the certification of that, right? So we're doing all of this. And then finally we get to, okay, now let's look at the assortment. What do they have? What do we need? What are their best sellers, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have to, do the PO and get them in. So we only have 7 brands. We're getting ready to launch a couple more. That's exciting for us. But we don't want to be 1,000 products. This consumer, she doesn't want 1,000 products. She wants one good one that's actually going to work. Right? That's what she wants.
She wants a site that she wants a retailer that she can trust to do that to that work. By the sounds of what you're telling.
Exactly.
As if this is all not enough. First of all, congratulations on this. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great concept. Well executed. No surprise there. What's next? What's next down the line? I mean, part of what you're working on. It's a funny question to ask sometimes because you just got this one out of the gate. But I know, I'm sure you're thinking a little bit ahead. This could be the rest of our lifetime kind of enterprise. But any thoughts about what's next and how you're going to grow this?
Yeah, I think True Potency, the key to True Potency for us, we're super focused on it. We just launched, right? So, when you just launched, there are a zillion things. There are a zillion things on the site that you want to change, you want to upgrade, you want to get more data, you want to understand what's going on. But then we do believe, and it's becoming clearer and clearer to us, that this education piece, whether it be online webinars that people can just check in and say, okay, here's a low risk way for me to learn about something that I've heard of, but I'm not really sure about. Or in person. We've done a number of in person. We're doing some more when I go to LA week after next. It's really important because then you get customers talking to each other. Right. And that's always important. So that, and also putting our neuroscientist, Austin, because listen, he's not a medical doctor, but he does know the science. And so I've heard people say that have come, they're like, well, it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable that this just isn't, like stoners or whatever. Right. So that's great. And remember that True Potency is part of a larger company called GG Growth. It's a privately held company. It started with, as I said, it was founded by my partner, Nate, and he started Growers House. We also have, and I think that goes back to how we go to market, which you'll see a little bit on the site today, and you'll see a lot more maybe in a month or 2 months, which is that we really believe in video-led commerce. We happen to have the #1 YouTube series called Can of Cribs.
Such a great and well-produced show. So congratulations on that, because I learned, it's interesting, and I learn a lot. It's really well done.
Thank you so much. I have nothing other than the gentleman that now runs it reports to me, but I really had nothing to. It was again Nate's idea, and what he intuitively did, what he thought about was, okay, we're trying to professionalize these growers, and what are the things that you need? So they started a professional forum called Growers Network, right? So they can learn from each other, much like the old days of shop.org with you and I in the early days of the internet. And then he thought, well, we need something that is going to just help people understand. And really what he did was to create aspiration. You look at those big commercial grow operations, that I jokingly call it around the office, not your mother's pot anymore, because these are huge businesses, right?
sophisticated. So, and I've come to know the growers market a bit just as a part of the ecosystem, and it's so sophisticated. Genetics, the growing, the level of sophistication, and the science behind it is both the farming ag tech and the process is so sophisticated. And I think that's, again, a testament to that series is it's like a best practice manual at scale. But many of the things, many of those, it's like an ISO 9001 for cultivation. It's really, really insightful as well. And it's fun to watch, I think, as well.
Wonderful.
So,
and from an old retailer point of view, you'll appreciate this because let's face it, Nate is the host of the show. And guess what? When they talk to those master growers about what equipment they're using, guess who sells it? Just one click away, Grower's House. So,
yeah, there is lots of loving camera pans on very big equipment.
well, and many
look at that chiller. Look at that chiller up there in the ceiling. Get a quick shot of that chiller.
Absolutely, because there are companies that pay to sponsor those episodes. And so in some ways it's a little bit like QVC 2.0, right? And so for me right now, our focus is very much on True Potency. We're into the second season on Cannacribs, so you can expect another episode coming out in case you've caught up, and a couple of other Cannacribs babies, we like to call them. One is called Deep Roots, kind of shorter, more digestible, and a little bit more around the lifestyle. So not just focused on these big grow operations, and really getting the word out about True Potency, because what I've heard from women and men, but a lot of women, is that it's like, oh, finally, somebody is telling me what I really need to know, because it's like, we're trying to separate the fact from the fiction. This is not a panacea. CBD is not a panacea, right? It may help with certain kinds of things, and there's a lot of scientific data around helping with aches and pains and, kind of stress or anxiety and that kind of thing. But again, everybody is individual. We are not medical doctors, right? But we want to be able to give them real information and use data. So when we say it might be good for soreness, we actually have an algorithm. We have a database and an algorithm that helps. And it's based on all these medical studies and clinical trials that are going on around the world. So I think there's white space here. I really do. And you know me, I tend to go towards white space. I really think that there's white space here for a specialty retailer that can really do what needs to get done and help the consumer. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on, and we'll let you know how it goes. And in the meantime, we're launching everything. We got our social channels up. We're trying to get events up, webinars up, and actually get some more product on continue to try to find the best product out there.
Sure. You've been very generous with your time, and I really think you're pathfinding a direction for an entire new category. So congratulations on that. I think there's lots of lessons that we can learn here in Canada, and for the listeners in the States. How do they get to True Potency? What's the best way to get and find your site? It's up and going, right?
It's up and going. It's True without an E, so TRUpotency.com. And you can find us on social, our Instagram handle at True Potency. Google tends to work pretty well if you type in True Potency. We've tested that one or two times.
one or 200 times. Listen, Angela, it's been such a treat catching up with you, both personally and also to understand your latest venture and what you're doing. So thanks so much for your time and chatting with the voice of retail.
Thank you so much, Michael. Always a pleasure.
Well, thanks to Lisa, Claire, and Angela for being my guests in this episode. Now let's hit the highlights from Retail This Week e-newsletter, biggest e-newsletter in Canada. I put this together for Retail Council of Canada each and every week, taking a look at curating the top stories. We start off with, is MEC losing money or investing for the future? This from BIV Business in Vancouver. Great article here talking about the new CEO, Phil Arata, who took over as the head of MEC this summer. And lots of great quotes and insights. Dave Dean Gray, Craig Patterson are in here talking about basically while they are losing money or have lost a bit of money, it's really in context of repositioning, resetting the business, and it is a large business. Phil will get his arms around that, and we wish them all the best of luck. So check that out. Empire wants to crack the Toronto grocery market, and Farm Boy is its secret weapon. I guess you be a Star Wars fan, it's Empire Strikes Back. But really, when Farm Boy was bought by Empire, Mike Medline said very clearly that Empire was going to use Farm Boy as an urban strategy, and you're now seeing that full articulation. The great Jeff York out of Ottawa talks about Farm Boy as Whole Foods 25% cheaper, but in this article by Jake from Financial Post talks about, it's really a cross between kind of Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. We haven't been to a Farm Boy. It's Southern Ontario, but now going to have another 10 stores. So great expansion happening. Lots of those in the GTA, where you think there's lots of grocery stores, in comes more Farm Boys. So we wish them the best of luck. Leon's Furniture marks 50 years of public trading. This from Retail Insider, Craig Patterson's Retail Insider. The good article here, kind of an overview article of the success of Leon's, and also has its banners, The Brick, and several others. So a good read up on a great Canadian story. Speaking of Canadians, we racked up $100 billion credit card debt for the first time, and we're not done adding to it. This from the Financial Post. So what's this doing in this newsletter? Well, I'm starting to think that all this debt the Canadians are racking up, and we're seeing some record bankruptcies, is going to start and is starting to dent retail sales in the short, medium, and who knows how the long term will work out. But something definitely to keep our eye on. Metro sells its stake in Miss Fresh. So Metro, a couple of years ago, bought this food kit business, Miss Fresh. It looks like they're going to continue to offer them in the store. That's from Canadian Grocer. So I guess exited what is a non-core business and decided to just cut the deal and then just offer them in the store. From around the world, Rent the Runway, expanding into the hotel room. So this is an article that it's so fascinating. Rent the Runway. You can order a product delivered to your hotel room, so you don't have to travel with any product. And then, of course, you just leave, because that's Rent the Runway. You've just rented product. Very fascinating. It's from Forbes. Walmart CEO talks about upgraded fresh department. It's often been said by Walmart and others, this from Canadian Grocer, by the way, that fresh and frozen is the killer competitive edge versus Amazon. And in and of itself, Walmart in the U.S. has about 25% market share, the biggest grocer in the U.S. In Canada, they're in the top few for sure as well, and growing. So interesting, long discussion there from Walmart CEO. Ted Baker, boss resigns as firm issues profit warning. So Ted Baker, as retailer, great retailer. I've got lots of their stuff, actually, lots of their sport jackets. But unfortunately, they're getting some weak consumer spending, particularly in the key UK and Europe markets. So they're really struggling over there, not just them, but the markets themselves. This from the BBC. IKEA to invest $220 million in becoming a climate-positive organization. Wow, that from this from GreenBiz. They want to, by 2030, the entire IKEA, they want to reduce more greenhouse gas emissions in absolute terms by 2030 than the entire IKEA value chain emits. Wow, what a great statement. So look forward, by the way, the president of IKEA Canada will be speaking at Store 2020 in late May. So mark that into your calendars, and early bird tickets available now from retailcouncil.org. Another article from Trade Vistas, American Chinese consumers are shopping like there's no trade war. We hear a lot about a trade war. Actually, this is a very good week, of course. For Canada, we had the new NAFTA agreement, CUSMA, Canadian-U.S. Mexico trade agreement has been signed. That's a very great accomplishment. Congratulations again to Krista Freeland and her team of negotiators. Looks like that one came out very well, and it has been signed in what is no doubt a difficult environment, particularly in the U.S., and looks like we got what we needed out of that agreement. But anyway, this just talks about how the American consumers are just shopping like there's no trade war. Like we can see that in the American consumer. The NRF talks about them being very resilient, and they had a record Black Friday. So it doesn't seem to be denting their confidence or their shopping, notwithstanding all the trade noise and the reality behind the trade deals that are happening. Now, what else we got? For independent retailers, got lots of great articles. Howard Fine Jewelers talks about their history. 52, the organization based in Ottawa. This from the Ottawa Business Journal, started 52 years ago. So check that out. Article, or actually this is a podcast, how social media and spike in wellness changed the game for BC retailer Sage Natural Wellness, and there's an interview there with Kate Ross LeBlanc, and so check that out. Women's Wear, passionate about adult toys, backing female-only business. This from Straight.com out of Vancouver. Check, good article there. Bentley Leather exits court protection after successful restructuring proceedings. So as they've gone through, they being Bentley Leathers, called out a whole bunch of stores, probably had way too many, and this from Retail Insider. So there's a lot of detail there. We wish them the best of luck as they come up and out of that. Mile End Record Stores, this from Montreal Gazette, facing steep fines for open late. I guess they had to close at 5 and they stayed open a little bit longer and got dinged. So interesting discussion there, an exploration of that issue. In the supply chain digital section, we've got, what have we got? Walmart partners with self-driving startup Neuro to test autonomous grocery delivery in Houston. Now, we've often talked about that from Kroger, who's been working at that. And they also do Domino's. This from TechCrunch, but now they're doing, Walmart's doing that. Article from Canadian Grocer, A Frictionless Future, talks about payment trends. This is a really good overview article, by the way, notwithstanding the fact, it's in Canadian Grocer, great magazine, but it also applies to the rest of retail. So very good market. Talk about a good article. There's a McKinsey article next. Bulky's Beautiful, how the Wayfair is poised to meet the massive new demand for home goods. So that's a really interesting article because a very sophisticated supply chain. Let's see what they say. The company sells $8.6 billion in furniture and home goods to 19 million active customers in Europe and North America. In 2019, the company and its logistics partners expect to ship more than 30 million parcels. And here we're not talking shirts and T-shirts. We're talking, home goods. So, great supply chain article. And last, certainly but not least, our friends at SCI, in partnership with Walmart, have opened up a new 450,000 square foot distribution center. This is SCI's biggest dedicated and purpose-built facility. 750,000 customers a day knock on the door of Walmart Canada. So we wish them all best of luck. And if you want to learn a lot more about SCI and about 3PL, third-party logistics, there's a great interview with President and CEO Chris and the Peak panel that I did. So check a couple of episodes back and be sure and learn lots about that, about how SCI and really 3PL is more people and real estate business now than it is anything else. Anyway, that's the news for the week. There's actually a ton of news this week, but I just had to pick out a few of those things. Oh, by the way, late breaking news. Very exciting and really well themed to our friends in the cannabis industry, in the retail cannabis industry. Finally, Ontario has acknowledged and is said that they're going to open up the market. So they're reading these news as it comes out, but it looks like they're going to open up the market to allow full licensing, not unlike what Alberta is doing. They're talking about opening up 250 licenses this year, starting, I think it looks like April. Maybe if they've got a sense of humor, they'll do that on April 20th. But that's great news. A little overdue for sure. It's still April. That's still a ways away, but people can start getting their retail leases back in order. I think already seeing on social media lots of great retailers posting that they're looking forward to having more stores. I was in the Superette store, Mimi and Drummond's store in Ottawa this week. Did a tour, first-hand tour. I'd seen pictures of it. What a fabulous store, great concept. I toured cannabis stores around North America. Lots of fantastic concepts. And Superette was certainly a highlight for me in Ottawa. So I visited Superette. And stay tuned, by the way, next episode, I should say, is from the Canadian Cannabis Awards. We'll be talking about, that's 2 episodes from now, we'll be talking to Mimi and Drum as they swept the CCAs and won a bunch of awards. Anyway, that's a wrap on this edition of The Voice of Retail. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of M.E. LeBlanc Company, Inc., and you can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great week.